welcome along to this panel discussion for the Business Show Ireland. Today we're going to be discussing the topic Going for Growth, discussing pivots to digital and maintaining growth post-COVID. My name is Melanie Byrne. I'm the Director of Business Analysis at Expleo Ireland, and I'm joined here today by John Delves. He's the Managing Director of Magnet Networks and AirSpeed, who supply connectivity solutions and are exploring hybrid working. Dara Keogh, CEO of GeoDirectory, who are looking at e-commerce and the impacts of businesses pivoting to more digital engagements. And Seamus Matthews, Senior Director of Enterprise Indirect Business Segment with Digital Realty, where he leads a team focused on building a global community of hybrid IT partners, delivering digital transformation solutions for enterprise customers. Welcome, gentlemen. And thank you very much for joining us today. You're all very welcome along.
Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Melanie.
No problem. We're discussing here today how technology has enabled these business pivots and growth over the past 12 months. I guess 12 months ago, a lot of organizations had almost an enforced digital transition. Seamus, for yourself at Digital Realty, did you find that technology had actually prepared companies for this unexpected transition?
It's a great question. I think there's no doubt, is the short answer. Maybe a little bit context for people who might not know Digital Realty, Melanie. I might just frame it a little bit just to say that we're in the data center space, and we're in the business of providing digital infrastructure to companies to allow them to transform their businesses, as we're talking about today. In terms of scale, we have a fairly lofty perch on what's happening in the industry because we're a $40 billion business. We have over 300 data centers worldwide in 24 different countries. Locally in Ireland, we're the largest provider. Seamus Dunn and his team here locally in Dublin operate 8 data centers, 47 carriers. They do a lot of work with Magnet and other partners like HPE, GreenLake, and PFH. A lot of customers will know them. Mm-hmm. And I think what we've witnessed in the last 12 months is that almost a little bit, I think if you jump into the deep end, you'll learn how to swim quite quickly. But clearly for the businesses that had already invested in hybrid IT deployments, I think they were in the pool already, and they had a head start on everybody else. I think certainly from our perspective, we would have seen the number one priority really when the pandemic hit was the health and safety of staff, first and foremost, and we were certainly no different. So we orchestrated things so that critical operational staff could remain on site in a healthy environment while empowering everybody else to work remotely as fast as possible. And I think that was the first real rush and challenge that business leaders had. And really digital transformation, that's really what it's all about, right? It's about people and business outcomes. And technology is really the enabler. I think the second priority then in the last 12 months was about let's make sure our people are safe, and then let's make sure operations are kept up and running. So many of our customers are offering frontline services to us as citizens, and the same globally. And then I think there was probably another group of customers though that had already made significant investments, and it was definitely an opportunity for them to accelerate their transformation. I'm conscious of, we're a global market now in Ireland. You look at the amount of FDI that we've got here, and a lot of the international companies that had made those early hybrid IT investments, they're accelerating. I see Volkswagen have doubled their digital transformation budget to a whopping $27 billion this year. They've doubled it. Bank of America, I think Brian Moynihan recently said that 35% of his overall budget for the bank at Bank of America is on technology alone. And that's phenomenal. That kind of speaks to this transition that businesses have had from moving to being a bank or a car company or a manufacturer to being technology companies. And I think the other thing, and I think a lot of our customers that we would deal directly with in the IT space, I think a lot of them are now getting the recognition from a senior leadership perspective, from the board, from the chairperson, that this digital transformation is now a critical part of our business.
Yeah.
So in many respects, I think the pandemic has set a new baseline for companies.
Yeah.
And it's probably set a higher bar now for how quickly businesses can actually transform.
Exactly, yeah. And I like to hear you say about, the priority being well-being of the employees, because, for myself, from a business analysis background, we have to focus on people and process as well as just technology. So it's great to see that, there is the importance of the people there. John, I suppose from your experience at Magnet Networks and AirSpeed over the past 12 months, what trends have you seen in this digital pivot?
Yeah, I think very similar to what Seamus is seeing on his side. We're seeing it, from I guess a slightly different perspective, because we see the usage on the networks and the increase and how that changed. And I guess we were all faced with that challenge on March the 12th, where suddenly we had to spin up our operations, from, and this was certainly the case within our office, from working from the office to working from home. And we were able to use our own solutions, which we'd already been using. So we'd done it in 3 hours. So people suddenly, from a safety perspective, had to work from home. It was pertinent, but in telecoms were, an essential service, but we still wanted to protect our teams. So within 3 hours, all of our teams were doing the exact same job, but just doing it at home, using our solutions such as Magnet Talk, which is our hosted voice. And I think what we saw is that real rapid shift from businesses, to work from home. And I guess the other part was being that a lot of them still had that traditional bricks and mortar business model and suddenly had to pivot to innovating and to going online. And really the two key enablers there is cloud, but then the connectivity to the cloud. And that was absolutely essential for our customers. So straight away, one of our products that had a surge in demand was our 4G Anywhere solution, which is a mobile solution. So it could be rapidly deployed. We could get it out to the customer within 24 hours, and then they suddenly had a quick and working solution. And it can be used as your primary, or in a lot of cases, was used as a secondary backup. So if something happened to your fiber connection, as an example, you could switch over onto this mobile connectivity solution. So that was absolutely critical. And then what we also saw, I think sometimes with digital transformation, there's so many buzzwords and industry slang that it gets quite confusing for people to understand, well, what do we mean by digital transformation and how can that impact my business? And I think for a lot of businesses, what it meant was suddenly they might be the equivalent of in DVD technology, and they're looking across at their competitors having switched to the Netflix equivalent. And that rapid need to change and to move into the cloud, I think is one of the great disruptors that's available, particularly to SME businesses in Ireland, where suddenly you can get access to the same great technology that only a few years ago was available and affordable to large enterprise customers. And it's really helped create a much more level playing field.
Yeah.
But I always like to think of it in much more practical terms. And the best story that I came across was my own experience going to the barber. It was around early December. The lockdown had just been eased before Christmas. Everyone desperate to get a haircut, before Christmas. And suddenly my barber had switched to booking online, so you had to go, and fantastic experience. So I've 4 kids, but 2 boys coming to get their haircut. Could book the appointment. So instead of going on spec where you could be there for an hour and a half or 2 hours, you disappear from home and you could come back 3 hours later. You could book your appointment in and out in 30 minutes. Yeah. And when I was sitting with the barber where I was chatting, what's it like I said, this is fantastic from a customer experience, but what's it like for you? He said, much better, John. I said, now I can book in my lunch. I can get 30 minutes. Couldn't get that before. And then we looked across the road where there was another barber, and everyone was out in the freezing cold queuing for their appointment. And you look at that customer experience versus the customer experience I was getting. Yeah. And then suddenly also this business has transitioned to the digital experience. And if he wants to switch location, he can bring all of his customers now with him with a simple email. He can give them offers on quiet days. So when we think about digital transformation, it can be as simple as that for a small business in Ireland to completely transform their model, create a much better customer experience, and suddenly be in the digital world. And I think it's these practical stories, and it's happened the length and breadth of the country.
Exactly.
Small businesses have really innovated. They've really, brought in that whole experience, but in very practical ways. And I think that underlying technology, the connectivity, the being able to work from home, work from the office, and that seamless transition is absolutely key. But very practical.
Yes, as you say, future-proofing, but as well, almost bringing it back to what Seamus was talking about, the well-being element. The technology is helping him get his lunch break. It's helping him work better.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see these extra benefits. Customer branding as well, and just looking at that. And I suppose, Dara, from GeoDirectory, you guys have probably seen a lot of trends with e-commerce, and probably a lot of people, maybe having to switch to online. So what have you seen in the last 12 months?
Well, I suppose really what we've seen is a rapid continuation of what was already happening, which was people moving online. So what the guys have been talking about is the technology supports it. And fundamentally, you have to have them in place, otherwise you can't do the next bit, which is essentially, for many companies, have a web service of some type. And so what we've seen is that, what was expected to take 5 years took 1. And now it's ingrained and in place, as John was saying about booking his barber's appointment. And I think what you see there is that what also you have to look at is more general trends and how that impacts the business model. The business model is really what we're talking about here. The channel of delivery is online, but how do you modify your business model to ensure success? And one of the sort of broader economic changes that has happened as well is a sense of wearing the Irish jersey, if you like, and buying local because you're staying local. And so what you're seeing is a change in purchase patterns in the sense that you see city centres becoming almost empty, and fringe towns beginning to buzz because people have got into the use got used to working from home now and are prepared and have the confidence to leave and book themselves in for half an hour off and go get a cup of coffee locally, right? Yeah. So you're seeing local business are prospering and gain in traction for business that they never had before. Now, it's not a universal win, this movement, but it certainly is a change. And it looks like whether that change will become ingrained or not is yet up for debate. For example, today, there's notification by Google saying they're going to get everybody back in their office. They're starting straight away. By September, you're going to be 3 days in, unless it was exceptional circumstances. And on the other hand, you have Twitter saying everybody's going to work from home from now on. So we have this changing phase, and how that affects things going forward will be very interesting. Will people continue to buy online? Will they continue to grow online, or will they switch back to bricks and mortar? And probably the answer is it's going to be a mix of both. It's going to be a mix of online transaction and also offline transaction. I don't think it's going to be just go online forever and ever. I think there's going to be a mix of both. Now, there's definitely going to be more growth online coming forward, and I think that'll lead to very innovative and interesting products for everybody to look at and engage in. And that's got to be good for everybody. It's got to be good for the consumer. It's got to be good for the businesses, and it's it's got to be good for the economy. So it's a win. While COVID has not been great, it has sped up the revolution, if you like, or the evolution rather than the revolution, and that is seen as a good thing.
Yeah, good point. Definitely, as you say, it's just speeded it up. It's supported it, and I suppose it's made people look at it now rather than wait and have these 5-year strategies. I think somebody mentioned that when we were discussing this earlier. 5-year strategies have had to be put aside and things brought forward. So it's enabling. I suppose the theme of the business show this year, it is about rebooting Ireland and shaping the future of Irish business. There was this unexpected, I suppose, transition 12 months ago, and people had to react. Things have stabilized for companies, but now going into the future and shaping that future for Irish business, how do companies maintain that growth post-COVID? And what would your advice be to companies? And John, maybe we start with yourself on that. I'm going to ask each of you, but maybe if you can give your point on that.
Yeah, I think with businesses switching, to very much online in the cloud and the ability to, I guess, collaborate anywhere and to sell, connectivity hasn't been more important than it is today. And one of the key challenges I think businesses had to survive. So you spun up your what you could get your hands on 12 months ago. And I think it's now moving from that survive to thrive, very much so. And I'd challenge every business to really look at, now that you're so dependent upon the cloud and online, what's that foundation layer in your business with regards to your connectivity? Is your full business actually built on something that's probably more of a residential product, only costs you 40 euros a month? Or have you got robust, resilient connectivity with products that have the service and SLAs associated with, like dedicated internet access? And have you got that resiliency if something were to happen to your primary access, that it can fall back? Because if you're suddenly without connectivity, your whole operation can shut down. And really look at connectivity as a foundation, as you would in any other part of your business, because you've so much reliance upon it nowadays. As you've pivoted to online, as you've pivoted to the cloud, then all of these services need that constant connectivity, both in the office and at home. And really the key is you're going to want to be able to seamlessly transition between your work and office and anywhere else you might need to work beyond that. So yeah, check your connectivity, check your provider, make sure you're getting service, making sure you can talk to your provider, that they're going to answer it. You're not going to wait 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and it doesn't matter where their call center is. So you're going to talk to a human at the end of it. You're going to get an answer in sort of 9 rings, which is what we promise. All of our team are based in Ireland, 24/7. Average tenure of our people is 6.5 years. So they're qualified, know the products, know the understanding, and really make sure you're well invested in that core foundation layer for your business.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks for that, John. Seamus, for yourself, I suppose, what's your advice for this maintaining the growth? The good work has been done. How do we maintain the growth?
Yeah, listen, it's an interesting one. I think it's different for every customer. I think certainly some of the moves that were made during the pandemic were foundational moves for a lot of companies. But I think one thing we've learned over the last 15, 20 years is that digital transformation is really a series of transitions. So maybe for some of those companies last year, the transitions were around what was necessary as a kind of a minimum baseline to keep the business operational and keep their staff healthy. I think in terms of going forward, companies are starting to look at, and we certainly see customers from a board level down now, starting to plan for future transitions and trying to look at budgets very differently than they would have had before. And very similar to the points that John is making, the connectivity piece is huge because part of this digital transformation is really moving to hybrid architectures, which is why the data center industry over the last 5, 6, 7 years has really transitioned from being a supplier of power, space, and cooling to becoming the bedrock for hybrid IT. And that's because of their connectivity to public clouds and allowing agility within the clouds. But that decentralized connectivity network now that companies are now buying into to move to hybrid, to allow them to transform and to be more agile. What that means now is that they need to be more cognizant of their data going forward, because companies, as they transition to being more tech-like companies, data is the new oil, as we all know. So not only are companies creating and aggregating and exchanging more data, but they've got a plan for it. And there's a term in the industry, and it was coined about 10 or more years ago, called data gravity. And we have a data gravity index that helps customers plan for, if you like, the gravity effect of creating so much data and pulling all that data around your now distributed network. And that takes a little bit of time and planning. And in fact, Dublin, in our latest report, Dublin will be among, I think by 2024, will be among the top 5 European cities when it comes to data gravity. And so that means that, Irish enterprises really need to consider that. But I think post-COVID, Melanie, a lot of complementary transitions will start to take place. The early transitions are the toughest ones. There's a lot of internal learning. and there's a lot of new skills developed in-house with among staff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of requirements, and of course I come from it from an enterprise IT perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the skills that would be needed to operate an enterprise's IT in-house, on-premise, as we say,
Yeah.
they're very different skills once they move to a distributed hybrid IT architecture.
Yeah.
And so the early transitions tend to be the toughest ones. And then there's a lot of internal learning done, and that IP then carries forward, and it really helps them. I mean, I was thinking of what Dara said earlier on. I mean, even though Microsoft are the scale they are globally, you know, their business grew 8, 9, 10x in 2 months last year.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly saw a number of 894% growth between from Q2 from Q1 last year because of the pandemic. So I think there was a lot of things learned last year that will really help companies going forward.
Certainly, is lessons learned, and good basis put in now that can carry people forward. And Dara, I suppose for yourself in the e-commerce world, you talked earlier about people. Yes, they were kind of gone onto the online channel, but they do still have the bricks and mortar, which is going to be coming back online, as you might say, this year. So, what advice would you give to organizations there?
Well, what I'd say is, before I go into that question maybe directly, I just want to comment on what the guys have said, and I think there's two key words that I picked out of it. One is data, and the other is actually friction, things that cause friction and problems, whether it's connectivity, cloud, or something else. And the reason I'm talking about data is just it gives me a chance to talk briefly about GeoDirectory, because we're a company that supply data as well as services, and we supply all the data that people use to find a location. So whether you have water coming into your house, or electricity, or gas, or TV signal, or an internet signal, all using GeoDirectory. Okay, banks, insurance companies. So we have a broad reach there. And what we see is a key thing about, and I completely agree with Seamus, data is the new oil, and it's really how companies are going to really magnify their performance. So what we see is this, what we call this friction thing, okay? And what we mean by that is that you currently have almost have been driven into a single channel supply route, which is online, and you have to do that. But what happens when you open your doors and you have both going? How are you going to manage that? How are you going to manage, being pulled in two directions at the same time, but maybe, and very different needs? And Melanie, you mentioned processes there at the start, and this is a key driver. It's actually not the very complicated stuff that people get wrong. It's the very easy things that they forget, don't focus on, and that causes very complicated problems. So you have to focus on and think about, okay, I'm just going to pick a small business rather than enterprise level business, who's maybe fulfilling 10 orders a day, okay, 50 orders a week. Yeah, and they're going around and they're picking and packing in their own operation. How do they do that when they also have somebody calling to the door, or they have orders to meet at the back gate, and all that at the same time? Are they going to need, how are they going to meet both or all three in that case? And so they need to think that through. And also, we've seen a load of fiction. We're talking about the e-commerce. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'm just going to dive in here as it came up and talk about that for a second. And on companies' websites that transact in e-commerce, that are running off the platforms the guys supply, the real platforms that they supply and services. What you see there is actually the worst point of transaction is just at checkout. That's where most fall-offs happen. And
we hate paying, Dara.
Everybody hates paying, right? There's two things about the transaction. I'm going to touch on what we did. We did a lot of research on this, okay? Because we're owned by Post and Ordnance of Ireland, and they had a big drive to support the SME sector and this move onto this space. And what we discovered is one of the key, the key area actually in transaction is at the checkout, and then the key area at that is actually people filling in their names and address. People hate doing it, as it turns out, okay? And I suppose it makes a lot of sense when you think about people trying to do that on a mobile phone and trying to key in things. It just annoys them. So, we have their services, and we've developed services that allow them to start entering, and then it drops down and it automatically fills in, and it's super cool. It's really fast, okay? And the other thing is what's happening is businesses are experiencing a second problem that they're not necessarily used to and are learning how to deal with, and that is, if you're delivering a physical product, if you don't capture the address correctly, you're going to have returns and you're going to have failed promises. And the problem with returns and failed promises is actually direct costs in terms of you have to maybe ship it back out again, and or give discounts and or refunds, which is not very nice. But also there's the indirect cost of affecting your brand, your trustworthiness, and repeat business. Okay,
Yeah.
so this friction is just this very small point, and one people don't think about it. It's in these sort of, if you like, the devil's in the detail here. A simple thing like an address, capturing an address correctly, can have a very major impact on how your business is viewed on this e-commerce platform. But again, how do you manage? How are you going to balance between your digital platform, if you like, and your, as you said, bricks and mortar output?
Bricks and mortar as well.
Yeah.
Melanie, just to add to what Dara said, just real briefly, I think one of the things that has come out in the last year is that nobody has all the answers around this, and I think one of the things that that enterprises should consider is being open to new partners. There are new partner companies in, I call it like a hybrid IT community. A lot of companies would tend to lean on the traditional partners that they know and love for decades, but actually this is now a new normal, and actually there are new partners in the community, in the Irish community and globally, that can really add value to companies, and we often find ourselves, because we're like Switzerland, because we're not delivering consultancy or these services to companies. We're offering the foundation. So and we end up talking to customers about the art of the possible, but the question always comes down to, okay, now I'm getting my head around the art of the possible here. Who can help us make that transition?
Yeah.
And so I think part of the answer to the who is that within the community that we would recommend, it's a mix of people they know and they don't know. Yes. And I think it's really important for them to embrace both sets of opinions.
Yeah. Do the research and search, isn't it? So
yeah, well, there's people like Dara and John though that are talking to customers and they've done the research.
Yes.
And it's like we're all it's Irish by nature, right? We're all willing to help and to offer our 2 cents and help customers come to their own conclusion for their own business outcomes. But I think that sense of a hybrid community is really, really important.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay.
Keep it simple.
Exactly. Keep it simple. That's it. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. It's flown by. Time flies. Listen, thank you very much, John, Dara, and Seamus, for taking the time to join us today. Thank you for listening as well. The guys will hopefully be around in chat rooms today if you have any questions for them. But thank you again, and we hope you enjoy the Business Show Ireland. Bye-bye.
Thank you.